Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rabbi Noah Farkas. I'm president and CEO of the Jewish Federation Los Angeles, and just really glad that you can join this very important webinar on AB 715. I want to thank Assemblymember Gabriel, Zbur, and Addis for being with us, along with David Barkosley, the executive director of JPAC, along with Julia Mates from JCRC, and Miller Saltzman, who works with JPAC. Again, I'm Rabbi Noah Farkas. I'm the president and CEO of Jewish Federation LA. And we're here to really talk about a very important bill that the Jewish community is putting forward to our government. It's called AB 715. And the purpose of the bill, frankly, is to help protect Jewish students in K-12 education across California. We're hearing from concerned students every single day. We heard from a student who attends LAUSD High School who was confronted by another student who wished that he could kill all the Jews and told this young lady that she should kill herself. She brought this concern to her administration, and when she reported it, the administration took no action. And that inaction created this feeling of feeling unsafe and harmed and isolated. We know of another school in LAUSD where the names of the Jewish students of the schools were read out loud on the PA during a pro-Palestine protest, and nothing was done. And yet in another school, just shortly after the massacre of October 7th, a first grade teacher held a lesson about the genocide in Palestine, long before this war even got underway. These are not anecdotal, small, simple stories. The data shows this every single day, that year over year, hate crimes and incident reports highlight a dramatic rise and increase in anti-Semitic incidences and crimes in California against K-12 schools, students and their family, including slurs and harassment, vandalism, and exclusion of Jewish students. So I want to set the record straight as we open this up. Our opponents have been spreading misinformation and possibly disinformation about the intention of this bill and trying to undermine the needs of students. This bill is not about the war. This bill does not define anti-Semitism according to any specific definition. They'll have you believe that this bill will silence teachers or silence students or silence families. It has nothing to do with silencing the right of free speech in schools. It tries to set standards. It tries to hold people accountable when they act badly. It tries to create a protective, clear, and fair environment for the tens of thousands of Jewish students enrolled in LAUSD and across the state. We want to create more supportive avenues to address pernicious issues when they arise, and we want to create accountability so that all students, including Jewish students, are able to learn freely. I moved to California 25 years ago, and I grew up in a state that had real anti-Semitism. I saw it, I felt it, our family felt it in our public schools, and we came to California because we wanted that golden promise of a better life for all people. California is the most inclusive state in the union, and we're really proud to live here. It supports over 1.5 million Jews. The second largest Jewish community in the world lives here in California, and we want to maintain that golden promise. And this bill, AB 715, aims to do just that. And so I hope you join in learning with us today, and if you feel compelled to take action to support this bill moving through the legislature so that Jewish students can be protected. It's now my honor to turn it over to my dear friend, Assemblymember Jesse Gabriel.
Thank you so very much, Rabbi Farkas. And first, just let me thank you for your friendship and your leadership and your partnership. And I am, for those of you who haven't had a chance to meet Jesse Gabriel, really proud and honored to represent the San Fernando Valley in the state legislature. And more importantly, for purposes of this call, really proud to be co-chair of our Jewish Legislative Caucus. And I just wanted to be here very briefly to say thank you, and to say thank you importantly to the authors of this bill for their incredible and tireless advocacy, our friends Assemblymember Rick Chavez Zbur and Don Addis, who have just worked with such incredible heart and determination and tenacity on this issue. Rick and Don, I am so grateful, as our Jewish parents across the state, for everything that you have done. Thank you to our organizational partners, and particularly want to thank David Bacarsley and Julia Mates, along with Rabbi Farkas. And also to let you all know that this is the top and only priority bill for the Jewish Caucus this year. And we made that decision collectively as a caucus at the beginning of the year to underscore to our colleagues how important this issue is to us. And it is important to us for a number of reasons. But first and foremost, because we believe in the transformative power of education. We are a tradition that venerates education. Many of us come from families of educators. Assemblywoman Addis was a longtime educator herself. And so we believe in education. And we believe that it is a very powerful antidote to hate. But we also know that there are those who are taking advantage of the classroom as a way to create hate and a way to create discrimination against our community. And so we can't allow that. And certainly, we are invested in this for the second reason it's a priority is because we, above all else, we love our kids, and we will do everything we can to protect our kids. And I come to this bill first and foremost, as I have told my colleagues, as the father of 3 young Jewish boys in our public school system here in the state of California. And for me, the politics around this bill are the fact that I love my kids. And I want them to be safe and protected and welcome in the classroom in the same way that I want children of every faith and background to be safe and welcome and protected in the classroom. And I know that this has taken on special urgency and meaning for our friend David Bacarsley, who recently became a father. So David Mazel Tov, we're so excited for you. And also I will say, and most importantly, thank you to all of you who are watching this Zoom and who have been part of the tsunami of advocacy from the Jewish community around this. I want you to know that what you are doing matters, your voices matter, your perspectives educate policymakers here in Sacramento. So I look forward to working with all of you. We're gonna work hard together. We're gonna do what the Jewish community and allies have always done. We're gonna link arms. We're gonna work hard. We're gonna tell our truth, and we're gonna get this bill across the finish line. So thank you to everybody, and I look forward to seeing you in Sacramento.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Gabriel, and thank you too to Rabbi Farkas, both of you, for your really powerful opening remarks. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. I'm David Bocarsley, Executive Director of JPAC, the Jewish Public Affairs Committee of California. We're the voice of California's Jewish community to the state capitol, and we represent 40 major Jewish organizations from across the state, many of which are on this call today. In the last 3 years, we've helped pass 45 bills into law that cover a wide range of issues important to our community. And this year, we've been championing or supporting 25 different bills. But there is perhaps no policy priority that we've been involved with in recent years that has garnered more attention, support, and yes, opposition too. No bill more important or impactful than our effort to counter anti-Semitism in public schools. And in the past decade, anti-Semitism, we know, has more than tripled in California, propelling the Jewish community into the not so coveted spot of being the second most targeted group in the state. But in our state's public schools, we've seen anti-Semitism increase at an even greater rate, at an almost 8-fold rate in the same time period. Jewish students and families are deeply impacted, and that's why so many of you have stepped up to push for change. Now, we've done a few of these webinars in the last 12 months at critical moments in our efforts to pass such a bill. And if you've joined us in the past, you know by now that the legislative process is complicated. There are a lot of stakeholders, and bills are ever evolving. Last year, we tried to combat biased classroom content with AB 2918, which was led by Assemblymembers Zbur and Addis, which would have applied common sense guardrails and transparency policies to the implementation process of ethnic studies, helping to ensure that pedagogically sound ethnic studies is taught in our schools. At the urging of community members, legislators, and education stakeholders, we pivoted to a new bill this year to create standards for ethnic studies. This is guidance for teachers and administrators that exists in all other required courses about what is and is not appropriate in our schools. That was AB 1468, also authored by Assembly members Addis and Zbur. And after a lot of progress there, the California Teachers Association and legislative leaders encourage us to broaden our scope and to fight anti-Semitism throughout the school environment. And frankly, our coalition was energized by this idea. So we worked with the authors and pivoted again to create AB 715. And the negotiations had earned us support from leaders of the Black, Latino, AAPI, and Native American caucuses as well. And we had hoped that we would also earn support from CTA and other stakeholders, given our responsiveness to their suggestions. But unfortunately, and I guess this shouldn't be surprising at this point, there are some stakeholders who just aren't interested in putting protections in place for Jewish students. And this bill still faces some significant opposition. But we've made some really good progress, and we're just 3 weeks away from the end of this year's legislative session. And together we can and will get something powerful across the finish line. So we've invited our perennial authors and champions to join us again today to dive more into what this bill does, where we're at with it, and what we can all do to finally get something meaningfully passed. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our incredible authors, Assembly members Rick Chavez Zbur and Assemblymember Dawn Addis. So before we begin, I just want to say how incredible our authors are. They have been working on this bill more than I have ever seen a legislator work on any bill. They care so deeply about making sure our Jewish students feel safe to go to school each day. Assembly members, thank you for everything you've done. And I'd like to begin by asking each of you to share a bit about how we got here today. Maybe either one of you can start.
Do you want to start, Tom?
Sure. Well, number one, I want to say thank you to you, David, and to JPAC for the tireless work, to Rabbi Farkas and Chair Gabriel, and I saw Julie on here earlier, and there's just been such a tremendous coalition that has been built across the Jewish community in particular, but an even broader coalition that has helped us do the work that has taken to get to today. But it hasn't been an easy road by any stretch. And I'll start, I think, with the most important way that we got to today is hearing from students and families how difficult, how dangerous, how under threat they have started to feel in the very places that they should feel the safest, which is the classroom. And I know for me, I taught students with special needs for close to 20 years. I am a mom myself, and I couldn't imagine sending my children to school and having some of the things that I've heard from people happen to my own children. Things like having a swastika put on the back of a student and nobody saying that that was wrong or helping that student. Having a student, as we heard in our last hearing, being called the Jew, no longer being called her name and being made fun of, having certain meetings put on Jewish holidays so that Jewish people could not attend those meetings. And the list goes on and on and on. And so I won't go into every single detail, but the real way that we got to this moment is that anti-Semitism is on the rise. It's hurting Jewish children and families, and it's making Jewish children and families afraid to go to school. And there's no way to ignore that. And so we started on a path, as you heard David talk about, that included different pieces of legislation. And I will just end by saying this. As a teacher myself, I've always believed that the better road is one of collaboration. And so when people came to us and said, would you please change from transparency to a standards bill on ethnic studies, we thought, okay, we want to be collaborative. We want to work with our partners. We've always had positive relationships with CTA and teachers across our state. We value them, and we'll try it. We'll try doing a standards bill for ethnic studies, and I still believe that was a good thing to do. And then when those very same people asked us to please change to anti-Semitism, we made that change, trying to address anti-Semitism across our state, knowing how important it is in this particular moment. And it's been incredibly challenging, as all of you know. But I'll just turn it over to Assemblymember Zbur with this thought that If not for each and every single one of you, I see almost 400 people on this Zoom. If not for your voices, we would not have gotten as far as we have so far, and we have a ways to go. But I do believe that with you at our backs, under our wings, that we're going to get this across the line this year, and that's the commitment from the Pro Tem and the Senate Ed Chair. And so, want to say thank you to each and every one of you.
Assemblymember Zbur.
Yeah, so I want to thank Assemblymember Addis, Assemblymember Gabriel, David at JPAC, Rabbi Farkas, and all of you that are in the JPAC coalition. Frankly, it is because of your voices that actually this bill, I think, we're going to make it through this year. It's been, really the most complicated bill I've ever worked on since I've been in the legislature, because it has strong opponents who are a challenge to address sort of concerns. It's a complicated issue area, and frankly, we've got opponents that basically are misrepresenting what we want, what we're trying to do, and are misrepresenting what the bill does. And so, in that context, what Assemblymember Addis always reminds us that we need to be very clear on and clear-eyed about is that this bill is about protecting kids. That is really, and protecting Jewish teachers and protecting the Jewish community, but primarily protecting kids, because I don't have a week in my office where I don't get multiple calls about new instances of anti-Semitism that are rising in our schools. And this is not just an issue that is like everything else that happens. I can tell you that we know that the problem is acute, it's serious, it's harmful, and it's widespread across the state of California, all of those things. And that calls for a strong response and is the reason why we can't give up on this bill. So I just want to, finish my opening comments by thanking everyone that's on this call. We saw how the community rallied in the prior versions of this bill. We are going to continue to need your help in the course of especially in the next couple weeks as this bill continues to move forward. And just want to thank you ahead of time.
Thank you both. And by the way, we're going to have some significant dedicated time to talk about how everyone can get involved later. But before we jump into all of that, I do want to start by talking about or hearing from you about what the bill does. Let's talk about just a very high level, a brief overview of what the bill is in its current version. We all know that, of course, the bills are subject to change as negotiations happen during the legislative process, and we'll discuss in a minute all the conversations that are happening on that front. But to level set, Assemblymember Zbur, can you share the highlights of what's in the current version of the bill?
Sure. And so I'm going to talk about the current version of the bill, and just, everyone should be aware that we are going to be heading in the coming week into some significant negotiations with legislative leadership about this bill. But let me tell you what's in it now and what our starting point is. And the other thing I just want to say is, I know that folks that are even in the coalition are, have read some of these newspaper articles that are that have been in the newspaper and have come back and said, God, this bill sounds like it's something that is harmful. What you're reading is about something that is not this bill. So I want to just make it very clear that our opponents have a very sophisticated opposition that's in place, and it's intended to try to describe the bill in ways that are not about what this bill is about. So first of all, at its core, the bill is trying to protect students by providing guidance on what constitutes an anti-Semitic learning environment, and how that learning environment is created, and includes provisions that protect against it to try to make sure that we're preventing those learning environments. It clarifies that an anti-Semitic learning environment constitutes discrimination under the Education Code. It clarifies and expands the role of school boards and administrations in addressing discrimination in schools and in learning materials, both in the instruction and in the materials that are being used. It creates an office of an anti-Semitism prevention coordinator who will be responsible for developing and providing trainings to better identify and combat anti-Semitism. That role will make recommendations to the legislature and the Department of Education on things that need to be done to prevent anti-Semitism going forward, and it will have a role in tracking both complaints and instances of anti-Semitism in the schools so that we understand what's happening in the school and we can do more to respond to it if we need to. It will ensure training is a big part of the bill. It will ensure that teacher trainings around anti-Semitism occur, and it will uplift prevention and education, as well as restorative justice practices. It will establish guidelines for discussing controversial topics and how we address controversial topics in the school to make sure that it's factual and balanced, and that it is, complies with standards that teachers already are subject to in every other subject matter area, and making sure that those standards are being applied when it comes to the issues that are harmful to Jewish students and families. It requires that districts that engage in discrimination will engage in corrective action plans, and requires that actually when issues of discrimination and anti-Semitic environments arise, that districts actually have to take corrective action. And then it also increases compliance requirements that are applicable to instruction and materials, so they apply to these third-party contractors that school districts are often bringing in and teaching certain subject matter areas. So that's really what the bill does, and it's a comprehensive approach to try to address this problem in a meaningful way.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's exactly right. This is robust and multifaceted. And as you kind of said at the top, it's a product of compromise. It is a product of taking a lot of feedback from a lot of stakeholders who are involved in this. And some of those stakeholders continue to move the goalposts, and that's the challenge that we're facing. I want to pass it over to Assemblymember Addis and ask you this question. So a lot of the community members joining us today were ready to join us on July 9th for the Senate Education Committee hearing. But the day before the hearing, there was a major announcement which included that the hearing would be delayed. We know that we had community members already in Sacramento when they got the alert, and others who got out of the boarding line literally at the airport when they saw the alert on their phones. And that's not typical that we have such a big pivot the day before a major hearing. And we're really sorry to those who were impacted, and we don't anticipate something like that happening again. But Assemblymember Addis, can you shed some light on what was happening behind the scenes at that moment? Tell us about the conversations that happened around that time, why the hearing was ultimately postponed, and what were some of the commitments that were made?
Well, first, I want to thank the folks that were making the effort to come up here. I did meet one woman up here who had taken the train up for the hearing and talked to me about what it was like as a child and the anti-Semitism that she experienced here in the United States, and how upset she was because we had all thought that those days had ended, and now this is rearing its ugly head again in the schools. And so I want to say thank you to those people, and also make a plea to everybody to please do come back for this next hearing. When this hearing is set, we really do expect to move forward. And we have a commitment from the pro tem as well as the Senate Ed Chair that we will cross an effective anti-Semitism bill before the end of this legislative session. And so we're committed to doing that. But, I was very surprised. I will be honest, I was very surprised that we were not able to move forward with the hearing. I felt that we probably had the votes. I was pretty confident that we would have had the votes to get that moving. But one of the reasons that I was surprised is that we have worked in good faith with our labor partners, with CTA, who I've always had a very positive relationship with, for over a year and a half, to try to bring people together, to pivot if we needed to pivot. And we did that at every turn. And so to have the kind of opposition we started to experience, the kind of mis and disinformation that we started to experience as we got closer to that hearing, for me, it really broadsided me. And we started hearing concerns from people on the committee, and then we were asked if we would please postpone the hearing instead of having the bill come up and have it be as contentious as people thought it might be, that we could continue the conversation. And that's when the pro tem gave us his commitment. That's when the Senate Ed Chair gave us her commitment. And that is what allowed me to feel comfortable in terms of delaying the hearing, because I know that we are working with partners that have goodwill, partners that are committed to get this done this year. And I will say that it's urgent to get this done this year, because we can't let our students continue to bear the brunt of hatred in their classrooms any longer. We have to take action. And then I will also say this. When we had our Education Assembly Committee hearing, then we had a floor vote on our intent language that was almost unanimous floor vote over in the Assembly. And then we were set for the Senate Ed hearing. That was a very, very short amount of time. And sometimes bills do come forward last minute. They get through the process in a short amount of time. This was different because we were asked to come up with something totally new and different, which we did. So I just want to reiterate that I want to say thank you to the Senate Pro Tem, thank you to the Senate Ed Chair for their commitment, thank you to the Diversity Caucus chairs who very early on came together and put out a statement saying that they object to anti-Semitism, and we're committed to getting something done this year also.
Thanks, Assemblymember Addis. So it's really helpful to get context of what was happening behind the scenes. And so, yes, there's this desire by Senate leadership to try to bring all sides to a compromise as it heated up. But as you mentioned, there was this firm commitment, and that was a big win in that moment. Even though the hearing was delayed, it was not canceled, it was delayed, and it will happen next week. We also came with it. What came with it was this major commitment from the chair of the committee and the president of the Senate to get something meaningfully done. So that brings us to the next question, which is what's been happening since to get us to that point. So I'm going to turn it to you, Assemblymember Zbur. I just want to frame this by saying that, outward communication from the Jewish community may have slowed a bit over the intervening 6 weeks, which included, as I'm sure you'll talk about, a 4-week summer break for the legislators. But efforts to move this bill forward have remained incredibly active throughout that process. So can you tell us a little bit about what's been happening since July 9th?
Well, I think everyone has continued to work hard, as Assemblymember Addis mentioned. We passed a bill that was basically at a very high level in the Assembly. It was something that's called intent language, which basically described what the bill would do. And so we had a very, very short amount of time to actually go from the goals of the bill to actually put legislative language in place before the Senate Education Committee was originally going to hear this bill. And so some of that language, I think, dropped about a week before the committee hearing. And so there were concerns that were being expressed from within the Jewish community about the bill, about details of the bill, because we had done it so quickly. So we've, in the last few weeks since that's happened, we've continued working on the bill. And when I say we, I speak broadly, because the Senate Education Committee and the Pro Tem have been meeting with all of the stakeholders to try to get behind the bill and really understand the issues in more detail. We, Assemblymember Addis and Senator Becker and members of the Jewish Caucus, we have been meeting with members of the JPAC coalition and other Jewish community stakeholders to really try to refine the bill and make sure that the questions and concerns that people had with our draft of the bill were being addressed, so that we actually, as we move into negotiations over the course of the next week, that the starting point includes the input of the Jewish community, Jewish leaders, and Jewish stakeholders. And we've continued to meet with people that have raised concerns about the bill. As Assemblymember Addis has said, our goal has always been to try to bring on board the folks that are in the Education Coalition and those leaders. We still are hopeful that we can do that, and we know that that dialogue will hopefully improve the bill. And so we've been trying to understand those concerns and making sure that what we do in the bill is something that continues to have teeth in it and address the real and acute issue that Jewish kids are facing in the schools.
Thank you. So while the final product is still being worked on, we should hopefully have some information, it sounds like, in the next week. And then for all of you on the call to know, there will be a series of hearings and votes on the bill starting basically a week from tomorrow, essentially. So that's when we're going to ask all of you to be physically there and help us push this through. And that's basically the continuation of the delayed hearing from before. Thank you, Assemblymember. Now, we've been talking a lot about, the misinformation that is coming from the opposition. And I just want to name some of the points that have come up. Some people have said that this bill defines anti-Semitism in one particular way, or in a way that would chill classroom discussion. People have made baseless accusations of racism or Jewish exceptionalism, or of simply just doing the bidding of Project Esther. These are all kind of quick and easy ways to undermine this effort without having to really put some thoughtful critique behind it. Assemblymember Addis, as a teacher, how would you respond to some of the main points from the opposition?
Well, I hate to use a harsh word, but I mean, it's absolutely preposterous that, 60 Democrats in the state assembly would vote for something that's pushing Project Esther under this administration. So, number one, I would say that Assemblymember Zbur, I want to thank him. He's been a civil rights leader for decades and has stood up to very, very detrimental attacks from the right for a very, very long time. And there's no way that somebody like him would lean into something as dangerous as Project Esther. Members of our caucus have spoken out against things that are coming from the president's administration and things like Project Esther. I have worked with children for over 20 years and have stood up time and again, whether it's for students with special needs or immigrant communities, against things like what Project Esther purports to do. And what we know is that when people further those assertions, they're really putting the Jewish community in danger because they're using the Jewish community. Things like Project Esther use the Jewish community and actually make the world more dangerous for Jewish people. So it's very, very difficult to hear that. What this bill is really about is children in our classrooms right now who are being targeted because somebody does not like something that is going on in international politics, that frankly, most of us don't like what's happening internationally. It's very difficult for all of us, but you don't target children for that. You don't make children responsible for that. And so, a lot of the opposition really is meant to deflect people from what this bill really truly is. I will also say that it's incredibly important that we understand that anti-Semitism doesn't just go away on its own. There's a concept out there that's called being an upstander. So a bystander is when you watch hate happen and you document that hate and you say, okay, I know that that's happening. An upstander is when you put yourself on the line to stand up against what is happening. And that's really what this bill is about, is saying that whether it's the Jewish community or any other community that is being marginalized and attacked, we have to stand up for children in our classrooms. And we've done this for many other communities. We've done this when the API community was under attack. We have done this when the LGBT community is under attack. We've done this when the African American community, the Latino or the Latinx community is under attack. And by and large, the Jewish community is on the front lines to stand up for other communities because we understand what it means to be targeted. Jewish people know what it is to be targeted. So the opposition, I will though say, has been very strategic in getting their message out and has been very strategic about how they misdirect and use disinformation about this bill. And so we have to keep fighting. And again, want to thank each and every person that is attending this Zoom for understanding the need to understand the legislation and to show up.
Thank you, Assemblymember. That was such a thoughtful and eloquent way of describing how we need to respond in this moment. Now, I gave a little bit of a preview of this, but I want Assemblymember Zbur, I'd love for you to be able to break down exactly what happens over the next 3 weeks and what hurdles this bill needs to overcome to get from where it is now into law.
Well, so first of all, we have to move very quickly. So we've got sort of all the things that will usually happen in a longer period of time that are going to be compressed in the next 3 weeks. The first thing is that we are going to be heard in the Senate Education Committee That will be as early as next week. We really need people to turn out to that. I think one of the things, one of the goals of our opponents is really to try to have people believe that the Jewish community is not united behind this bill. This bill enjoys more support from within the Jewish community than any other bill in the history of the legislature, and I think we need to demonstrate that that's the case with people coming out. After that, it will have to go through a Senate appropriations, and then it will go onto the Senate floor and then back to the Assembly floor. But the key, I think, action item is in the next week and 2 weeks, and that is, getting to Sacramento as many people as we can for the Senate Education Committee. The other side mobilized, I think, pretty well, and I think it was about even last time. And so I know how hard it is for folks to come from across the state, and we saw so many people doing that, but I just want you to know how important that is, that people sort of see that the community is here and mobilized and united behind the bill. And then I did one other thing before I sort of turn it over, is I just wanted to just reinforce, I think, something that Assemblymember Addis said about, sort of the disinformation about this bill. One of the things that I think folks have said is that, this bill is something that is hurting other communities, and that somehow doing something for the Jewish community is sort of some kind of special rights. That's a claim that is used against the LGBTQ community, or used to be used about the LGBTQ community all the time. And, we've had cases where kids were bullied in schools, and we never heard folks basically say, other than folks on the far right, we never had people say that we couldn't address an acute problem that kids are facing in the school because it was somehow some kind of special circumstance. We know that this is harmful, it's acute, and it's widespread, and it calls for a response this year. We can't wait another year. We've already been waiting for several years as this continues to build across the state.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Appreciate you bringing your own history of activism in that context into this conversation as well. So we want to make sure that we spend the majority of the rest of our time talking about what we need to do to take action. Maybe Assemblymember Addis, you can build off of what Assemblymember Zbur just said. Yes, we need people to show up in Sacramento next week, and we'll give more details about what that looks like in a second. Can you share some other ways that we want to make sure people can help? And then when you're done, we'll dive in even deeper.
Well, I'll say each of your stories are so important, and there's a lot of ways to tell those stories. So showing up to the hearing is incredibly important. Liking and sharing, things that are coming out of JPAC that you see on social media. I want to remind everyone, David, you mentioned the 40 organizations that JPAC is made of. These organizations from Northern California, the Central Coast, Southern California, and they represent all different kinds of service organizations that Jewish people do. So you have organizations that are serving children, organizations that are helping underserved, underrepresented, economically disadvantaged communities. Jewish people are not monolithic, right? Vast and diverse. So when JPAC puts out a call to action, puts out a social media post, asks you to write a letter to the editor or weigh in on something, that is a broad, diverse voice of the Jewish community that is trusted and can be trusted. And so I would say to show up and use your voice in all of the ways, whether it's the hearing, I'll reiterate, social media, writing letters to the editor, and weighing in, and importantly, having conversations with your friends and neighbors. And of course, last but not least, contacting your legislators. They have to hear from you and have to hear your stories so that they deeply understand what you're going through.
Thank you. And thank you both so much for all of the work you've been doing on this bill and for spending time with us today. We're just so grateful to have you as champions of our community. I am now going to introduce Miller Saltzman, our Director of Policy and Partnership at JPAC, who's been leading the coalition's effort behind this bill, and Julia Mates, JCRC Bay Area's Director of Policy and Government Affairs, who has been helping us lead the coalition's efforts while I've been on parental leave. Assemblymember Addis and Assemblymember Zbur just gave us the charge about all the ways that we can take action, but let's talk specifics about what people can do right now. And we know there are so many actions people can take. So we're gonna spend some dedicated time going through them. So Julia and Miller, thank you for all the work you're doing. I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you, David, and Assemblymember Zbur, and Assemblymember Addis, and Rabbi Noah, Farkas. We have incredible leaders who truly understand the problem our community is facing and the solutions we need. I'm excited to be here with Julia to share how you can get involved. First, we want to share a bit about why we're here. And you've heard some stories so far today, but just wanted to highlight a couple additional stories. A second-generation American Jew was starting his freshman year at a public high school in California. He was asked by his new classmates which middle school he attended, and he replied that he had gone to a private Jewish school. Immediately, he was told in public at his public school by fellow students that they wished all his ancestors had been burned in Auschwitz. And the student was really shaken, and he reported the harassment to the principal. The same students targeted him and threatened physical harm. And fearing for his safety, he stayed home and was deprived of access to education. When he returned to school, they'd assigned staff to escort him between classes to protect him. And while this ensured his physical safety, the emotional scars from isolation and from being singled out left his school experience really lonely and excluded. His only crime, so to say, was being Jewish, and the school did not respond effectively, and the Jewish student transferred schools. Another Jewish student received death threats from a classmate when promoting a Hanukkah celebration with his Jewish culture club, and no action has been taken by school leaders on either of these incidents, and he no longer feels comfortable wearing his Star of David necklace.
So this bill will help stop situations like the ones we just heard about, and will give teachers and school administrators the training and tools they need to recognize and respond to anti-Semitism. And that's only one of the problems AB 715 is designed to solve. As a parent, that story hits really hard. It's powerful. And right now, numerous Jewish students across California are facing this kind of hate every single day, especially with the start of school for this next school year. It makes you want to stand up and take action, and that's exactly what we're going to do together right now. So we've got hundreds of people on this webinar, and that means we have real power together. So for the rest of our time, we're going to channel that power into concrete actions to make sure AB 715 becomes the strong bill our kids and communities need. And the best part is you don't have to wait. You'll have time to take these actions right here, right now, during this webinar. So let's start strong. The very first step is filling out our action alert, which is how we show lawmakers that our community is united and paying attention. The link is in the chat, so please click it now. We'll pause and play some music for just a couple of minutes while you take action and fill out the alert. Every single one of us counts, and together we can make a difference. So please fill out the action alert now.
Thank you for filling out the action alert. Hopefully everyone was able to do it. And if you have any technical issues, feel free to reach out to us. The confirmation page you'll receive after submitting it, and also the confirmation email, if you happen to have clicked out of that, has instructions on calling your legislators with all the numbers, the link on how to find your legislators, and all the numbers for the members of the Senate Education Committee where this bill goes next. And it's really important to call them and tell them how important this bill is. We really appreciate you doing that after this webinar ends. And next, we ask that you send this action alert to 5 friends who will fill it out. Think of anyone in your network who might be able to just take a second now to fill out this action alert, and we'll give you another 2 minutes to do that now while we play another fun song. Thanks.
All right, thank you for spreading the word about this action alert. Hopefully your friends are filling it out right now and sharing it with others. JPAC has launched a powerful ad that's airing statewide to show how critical this bill is. And we're excited to share the ad with you right now. So let's take a look at it together.
We don't all look the same, come from the same families, or the same communities. All of us just want to go to school, learn, and have fun. Our differences make all of us stronger. But some people use our differences to make Jewish students feel bad, to feel ashamed of who we are, what we believe, where our families came from, and even to feel scared to go to school. Recently, it's gotten worse.
Anti-Semitism has surged 210% in the last decade, reaching a crisis point for Jewish students. AB 715 would protect kids from anti-Semitic hate and bullying.
Tell your state legislators, pass AB 715. Stop anti-Semitism, protect Jewish students.
We hope you found this ad to be powerful. We'll share the link in our email, thanking you for attending this webinar. It's also on our YouTube, and you'll notice at the end there's a website, yes, on ab715.com. It's our one-stop shop for action. Here you can find our action alert, a link to join us in Sacramento, instructions on how to call your legislators, op-eds, and responses to opposition arguments.
The bill will be heard in the Senate Education Committee on September 2nd or 3rd. The link to sign up and join us is now in the chat. I know it's not ideal that we don't know if it's the 2nd or the 3rd, but for now, please hold both of those dates. Let's take a moment to fill it out together. We'll confirm the exact date, time, and plan for the day as soon as we know it.
So you see the link to sign up in the chat. Hopefully you can fill that out now, and we'll just go over a few other ways to take action. If you're a student, parent, or teacher, you can fill out an action alert telling CTA that they should be supporting the bill, not opposing it. You can make sure that Jewish organizations you're affiliated with sign our support letter. We already have over 60 organizations in support of the bill, which, as you heard earlier, is the largest coalition we've seen from the Jewish community on a bill. You can make a big difference by submitting letters to the editor and op-eds to your local paper, and you can record very easily a student or a teacher you know who has a powerful story about why this bill is so critical. And finally, you can post on social media. All the actions we discussed will be sent to you in an email after this webinar ends, along with a recording of the webinar. And we just thank you so much for your time on a work day, and hope you understand why this bill is so critical for our community. Thank you so much, and we'll follow up with all the links you need.